so glad the DP pushed for a colorist, it's like, yeah, we were able to heighten this, that, and the other. And she felt it really enhanced her story. And so that's always like very rewarding.
Today we have Stephen Nadeau with us, and he is a colorist, and he's going to bring us through his process of color grading. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. It's great to be here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you want to bring us through, I mean, it's great to just start from the beginning of like, where did you get into color grading and why was it like, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It goes way back to when I was 13. I had a bit of a shakeup. Like I used to want to be a lawyer. And this is right when YouTube was coming out, right? And I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I saw on YouTube my best friend from Maine like made this like dumb video with like baseball bats, like the wiffle ball bats. And I was like, I want to do that. So I saved up and bought like a Sony Cybershot, that point and shoot basically.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because it was widescreen, 16:9. It wasn't the 4:3. I thought this was great. And I was like, let's make Star Wars videos. And we did. And we really wanted to amp it up. So we discovered sound effects and sound design. So we ripped off a bunch of Star Wars sound effects and put them in. And they were like, let's make the lightsabers. And so we saved up. We saved up for this really small program. It's called FX Lab Pro. And I believe it's bought by some like stock footage company now. But anyways, back then it was like $100, which to us was huge, So we saved up and we got it. And what we did was, so we figured out how to rotoscope and do all that in the system. And what we would do is we would import like the MP4 into Movie Maker, the Windows built-in software. And we didn't know anything, so we were exporting. We have to go frame by frame. So we were manually exporting every frame and importing it into FX Lab Pro, and then like learning how to rotoscope. There was no tracking. It was all done by hand. So eventually, yeah, it was crazy. And so we just got better and better. And then like the second summer we were doing that, because I would go up to Maine like for vacations. In the second summer, I was like, I looked at other parts of the program. It's FX Lab. I was like, there's color. I can make it look like it's snowing. What, And so, but that's when that started the rabbit hole. Like when I was 14, just like straight down to it. And yeah, like every part of, ventured in like producing, directing, editing, all like the hats. And color was the one that stuck with me. And, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the shooting part as well. But like, that's the thing that kind of propelled me down the rabbit hole of color. And went to film school, did all that, lived in LA, lived back in New England next to you guys. And now I'm in Atlanta running my own shop.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Like, it seems like a lot of people who get into specialties start with, like, I was making my own movies and things like that. Do you think that knowing everything about the cameras and editing and directing helps with the color?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, like, I was just doing a Zenny commercial, Zenny, the optical brand, and they shot on a Phantom Flex, but some of it was shot Rec 709 baked in, and then some is like that weird Phantom log that just doesn't transfer correctly with the input color spacer LUT. So, finding that out. And so knowing like, okay, this is a weird camera and having worked with it before, I was able to apply that knowledge. And speaking with DPs, it helps so much more if they're like, if it's an earlier Red, they've since fixed it a little bit. But, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, Red had this really distinct like green tone to it.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't like that. Let's make it more magenta or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've shot with that. So it definitely helps.
Yeah.
And now, was Atlanta a move that you made because like it's becoming much more of like the video space? Tyler Perry has his compound there, and it's just like, what did you move there for that reason?
Well, yes, partly, yeah. So I had worked remotely out of Charlotte for even like 5 years, and my wife and I, we married, and then when we were honeymooning, like we were like, yeah, we want to get out of Charlotte. I want to be back in a hub, which Atlanta is, and it was the closest. But I was like, we're looking at Boston, where I've lived before, New York, LA, and then PNW area, Pacific Northwest. And Atlanta, she was like, yeah, you always talk about Boston. It's so great. And I'm like, yeah. But she's from the South and like very Southern. I'm like, it's just a totally different culture. Like, I remember moving back up there and I held the door up for someone and they look at me and they go, don't do that. All right, I'm back in the North, right? So we were in like, so we decided on Atlanta because like it's the most hospitable to like her background, and you know every hospital's here. She's in healthcare, and so we were on our honeymoon, hanging out under the cabana, you know, drinking pina coladas, whatever. And she gets an alert on her, like an email alert that Emory's hiring, Emory Hospital, and so she got the job. And then they paid for us to move down here. So it just really worked out. It worked out really well. Yeah. And Atlanta is a thriving scene. Like
I love Atlanta.
Me too, man. And like there's so much to do no matter what you're into. And part of the thing is I went to SCAD in Savannah. And so like half of the people I graduated with went to LA and the other half went to Atlanta. So it's like I'm diving right into a network that I already have, which has been really, really helpful.
Yeah. The film scene down there is big. It
is, man.
It's a bittersweet place for me. I got all my gear stolen there, so.
Oh no! What happened?
Well, I left it in the car. I shouldn't have left the car.
Like overnight, and then it.
No, right during the day.
And you were watching it.
And I could see it. The guy took it all in 20 seconds. $75,000 of gear. Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh man,
good lesson to learn.
My stomach hurt. I'm like, oh,
good lesson.
Were you in the middle of a shoot too?
We were about to shoot. Yeah, we didn't even start yet. So we had to rent stuff.
Oh no!
So I haven't been back since.
But that's the blessing. That's the blessing right there. You didn't start shooting yet.
True.
Yeah, right.
We didn't lose files. We didn't lose footage. Like all that's good. And I definitely want to go back. I mean, I enjoyed being there, and the scene down there is amazing for film, music videos. They've done a ton of shows down there. I think it's become more popular than some of the other cities too.
I think so, you know, especially during like the pandemic, there was a mass exodus out of LA, especially, and tons of transplants from LA are here now, especially in the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, I mean, the city's doing a lot of tax breaks for filmmakers to come in to really, you know, uplift their whole city. So
yeah,
for sure. And if you look at the numbers, like, you know, it's like during I think it was 2021. Still, there were like 437 projects shot during the height of that, like the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, they're cooking. They don't stop for anything.
Yeah. So what's the, I don't know, like what is the process of getting footage from a shoot? And like, what's your process look like? Because it might be different than somebody else that color grades. Like, do you always know what you want to do with the footage when you know about the project? Does somebody give you feedback of where they'd like to go with color? Like, walk us through that a little bit.
It's all project dependent. I operate under the idea or the mentality, the notion that, you know, it's not my image. I'm here to help finesse it. You know, it's the DP and the director. They created this. So I'm here to help facilitate their vision for it. You know, I can, if they want me to put my style on it, awesome. I love that. But at the end of the day, you know, it's their call. So it just depends how early I'm involved. Like with filmmaking, if there's enough planning and pre-production, I'll be brought in. We'll run tests with the DP, create a look that is the general look. They'll have a production LUT and use that. And that makes things so much faster on the tail end because everyone's already approved everything. Rarely does that happen with commercials. Commercials, it's more, okay, this is what we're going for. Here's a lookbook. Here's the footage. This is what it was shot on. And that's delivered, you know, over overnighting hard drives or over the cloud. And then, you know, just to make sure I'm even in the ballpark, because that's obviously, especially on a quick turn ad, like a big quick turn ad agency project, I got to make sure I'm in the ballpark before I go down that rabbit hole. So I'll send them like 3 to 5 different looks that all are in line somewhat with the lookbook. I'll usually throw a one-off in there just in case they like it. They're like, oh, we want to go that way, which is always fun. But then they'll be like, we like this one. Well, we like the contrast in this one, but the color palette in this one, let's combine those. And then I'll riff on that. And so we'll nail that down, usually like day one, depending on how fast they can get feedback. And then I go in and do, you know, the first pass, second pass, and then send it to them. They make notes and I do 2 rounds of revisions usually. And by then we seal it up. And sometimes with films on lower budget indies, if they had like some unforeseen complication, like something that comes up in production, as it always does, Murphy's Law. They need like a very specific, we meant to shoot this during the night, but we couldn't. Our actor or actress got sick, whatever. Can you do day for night on this? Stuff like that comes up all the time. But yeah, overall, it's usually like the general process is I get the footage, develop some looks based on if they give previs or not, or based on our conversation. Like we really want this silvery look, like we did on one of the Zenny commercials, where like we want that pop, like this Nike commercial. And I was like, okay, great. So I made this like silvery look, gave them a few different options, and they went with the one that I like most, which was always great. That like, I think this one's going to work. And then the client comes in like, yeah, we like that one. And so, that's the process.
I feel like color in general, like changes the project so much. Like as a filmmaker myself, like my first thing that I like to do is like, oh, what does this look like with certain color on it? Like I have no idea what I'm doing compared to you. Right. It's like always the fun part is like, what does it look like? Because like when it's log or you have a production lot, you're like, yeah, this is like Rec 709 or whatever. And then you start to work with it and you're like, this is, it makes it incredible. Like it changes the whole feel of the film or the commercial or whatever it is. Like you can change the outcome of it by just changing the color.
Absolutely, man. And each genre, especially if it's like a genre piece, each genre has its own characteristics. So it's always fun to dive into those. I'll tell you what, so I just had, actually yesterday, I had a director for the final in-person review in my suite, right? And we were playing through, and she's like, how'd you see what it looked like before? Because she had this idea like, oh, no, the film looked so great before. She sees the difference. She's like, I never knew. I'm so glad the DP pushed for a colorist, It's like, yeah, we were able to heighten this, that, and the other. And she felt it really enhanced her story. And so that's always like very rewarding to hear.
Yeah. That's something like Dan and I would love to include in some of our projects. It's just some of them, the budget is so small that I'm like I wish, but there's a lot of times where it just can't happen. And it's hard because you've worked so hard on this film, and color grading is so important.
And we know that, but sometimes the client doesn't understand it.
Yeah, like how do you go about that? Like how would you sell in color grading so much to a client that they're like, oh yeah, because you see it as a line item and they're like, what's that? Like we're not going to pay X amount for that.
Can't you just hit auto on your iPhone and it'll be fine?
Isn't it in color?
Right.
Don't we a colored world?
Like, and now the Premiere Pro generative text prompt, you can text, make colors pop. Done. Color correction. No.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So like oftentimes, like one of my bigger agency clients actually out of Boston, they'll be like, let me see what the client will give. And they like usually the clients are pretty well informed in that instance, so it's not as much of a battle. But there are with like clients, like clients of my clients, that have no idea like what it brings to the table, right? So it's like, well, we have a lot, we can just use that. And then if like oftentimes I'll send them my reel, and that'll like give an idea of like, oh, okay, he's worked on this, that, and the other. And then sometimes I'll send them before and after stills, like this is what we can do. Or I'll do a test sample on some footage, like if it's in post-production already, and be like, this is what we can do. And so it's really like the seeing is believing, because
100%.
And that goes with if I'm sending a rough draft, I really hate to do that, because generally speaking, like they don't know what's in your head. Like they have imagination and they can picture what they think it's going to look like. So like I don't like to do rough drafts, because I like to get it polished and in the ballpark before sending it off, because a lot of people aren't familiar with the color process, and it's only like film's been around for over 100 years, right? And the main process, the main roles have been the same, give or take a few. But color is such an important part of the process now, and it's only 25, 30 years old. So there's still a lot of catching up and a lot of education to do. And with filmmaker clients come to me and they're like, what can we do here? Is there anything we can do? Like I've seen the red LUTs or whatever, like, but I want it to feel this way and so forth. And so again, it's like just the seeing is believing. Like this is what it'll look like. And they're like, oh, cool. Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, it's almost like you get your whole film done and you're unsure of like if you can afford the next step, but then you see it and you're like, oh, we got to just make this work because this is going to define, like you spent all this time. We actually have a project that we're working on currently, and we're looking into color at the moment. And
I know a guy if you need.
I mean, that's kind of why we had you on. We were going to have you do the color. We can talk about that off air, but yeah, we worked on this film, and we put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. And like, we know a little bit about color, but not nearly as much as somebody like yourself. It's hard to, like I said, convince a client about doing that at the end, because they see it and they're like, this is great. And you're like, yeah, but it could be 10 times better if it had this grade on it or whatever. And so, yeah, it's hard.
And I think the tricky spot is with that, like, let's say, you shot everything, you show them the cut, and okay, it's locked, great, cool. They're not going to notice the lighting discrepancies like any trained eye are, or is. And so, like, and then you're in this tough position of like, well, then I have to show my cards of like, this shot doesn't match, but then a colorist could do that. So it's like, I feel like it's this balance between being like showing your cards and then like, we really need this.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is like, they don't realize that things might look off a little bit. And they're like, yeah, this looks great. Like, we definitely, when we send projects to clients, we make sure they can't download it, because some people might just take it and be like, this is great, and just like post it. And you're like, this isn't done yet. Like, this is before sound mixing too. And they're like, oh, sound mixing? I'm like, yeah, the sound's not going to be like that. Like, we do all of that at the end.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's the right play. I do the same thing. I rarely am I like, download it unless they have a color calibrated monitor and this is an ongoing project like a film. But commercials, I'm like, never. Like, no, just look at it there. Like, we still have so much work to do.
Yeah, is that tough? Like, you have color calibrated everything in your studio, and then you put out your stuff, and like, people might be watching it on non-calibrated monitors. So is that tough to see?
Yeah, it is, especially like especially when they don't have color calibrated monitors or like a controlled lighting setup, or we'll export something out of Resolve, and then there's the education part of, well, Mac internal color sync doesn't recognize 121 profile tags, so you have to watch it in color calibrate or color manage software and so forth. So there's always that. But like, some of the monitors, a lot of the monitors, like, and they're cheaper now, can like get under 2 delta calibration, but still, like, you rarely have control of the saturation and a number of elements that really, affect the image. And oftentimes, I've seen it on Dells, like, they'll say it's under 2 delta, but the red will be way, way off, or the green. So yeah, to answer your question, it's always like, oh man, but that's the nature of the beast, right? I mean, like, it goes out in the world, and who knows where it's going to be displayed? Right. It's like, is it going to be displayed on the in-store monitor or something like that? There's no control. And then this one project I did, it was for a big company, and they were creating like this pamphlet, and in the pamphlet was this video player, but it was this really, really terrible monitor, so all the color looked completely off. So it's like, well, that's what it is.
Yeah, you spend all that money on grading, and then put it in like a non-calibrated, like crappy little whatever 480 monitor or something.
Right. It's like, all right, and it has to be in some like weird format, not even like MP4. It's like something that's just non-existent, only in that device. Yeah. Like, all right, well, here we are. But
did they ever? Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, do they ever come back to you and say like, hey, this isn't looking right, can you fix it? But you already know the problem to it is obviously the monitor is not color calibrated. Do clients ever come back to you with
Rarely, because I'm always at the upfront. I'm like, listen, like, if you don't have a color calibrated monitor, like, the best thing you can do is come into my suite and look at it on the master display, because that's what we should master it for. Right. Yeah. The true color. It's calibrated to a T. You're in a controlled lighting setup. Like, you have everything you need. So usually, like, I try to mention that a number of times in the upfront, so it like really sticks. That's important, because if they come back and like, the skin tones are all off, blah, 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 I'm like, well, if the blacks are crushed, like, this is a problem with newer Macs, but older Macs, like, they used to crush the image, right? And so they'd be viewing it and be like, this looks so contrasty. And like, no, come in and watch it like in the suite. Like, it's important. So that stuff happens all the time. But I really try to make an effort at the beginning to be like, no. Like, trust me. Like, you have to trust me like that. It looks fine unless you can get a color calibrated monitor. But on the other hand, I would say the majority of my clients, like probably like 2/3 of them have color calibrated displays. So it's like, it's great that they have that. And then in that instance, I'll be like, okay, here, download this, but obviously it has my like watermark on it and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think the future of, I know you mentioned earlier about like AI and like, it's interesting to see that with like editing and like people replacing backgrounds, because you also do VFX with your company, correct?
Yeah, right. Patrick Schultz, who's just a wizard at VFX. He's a VFX guy. So like oftentimes clients will come in, can you do a screen replacement or something like that? And I can do a screen replacement, but Patrick's work is going to be much, much better. He's going to add the shadows, the way the light looks, everything like that. So yeah, we do VFX, but the AI is doing great in VFX. Like, it's making cleanup and painting a lot easier from what I've heard. But with color, there's a frontier of color AI, and that's Color Lab, and it's accompanied by Nadeau Valentic.
Yeah, I've looked into it. Believe me, I look into all the AI color stuff because I'm terrible at it. So I'm like, will AI save my project? I don't know.
No, but I can.
I know you can.
No.
Do I have the budget?
Right. That's fair. Yeah, no, and so I tested V3 just came out the beta, and so V2 was solid, man. Like, they had 7 different engines. Keep in mind, it's still a growing like software, so like there are kinks, of course, but like, for things in a pinch, let's say you have a 5-hour turnaround, God forbid, but like it happens. And man, the colors that they use, 6 different cameras, all different looks, blah blah. And on this one ad that I saw on Hulu the other day, which was funny, I was like, oh, that's where it went. So like, and it was a 5-hour turnaround. So I was like, well, I'm bringing it to Color Lab V2, and like, it matched them. There's a little bit of finessing that you have to do, but it matched them really well. And one of the comments that client said on the tail end was like, I was so impressed by how well you matched that. And I was like, thanks. I'll tell Nadeau. Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, we can do this all the time. And you're like, no. Let's not shoot on 20 different cameras all the time.
Right. And that was like a one-off. I don't use it now just because I like to be in total control of the first pass. And like, it also is, it's AI is only as good as what you can teach it or what it's designed for. Like, it doesn't have any of like, okay, the DP said this about this shot or this scene and blah, blah. So now I don't use AI for the first pass of just matching. But that doesn't mean I won't in the future. I think it could be a very valuable tool for colors all around.
Yeah. See, I think it's gonna be valuable. It's gonna be valuable, I think, down the road more. But I don't think you're gonna lose that business, because just like you said, when somebody goes to color grade it and say something's off, they still need to tweak it. So if they don't understand how to tweak it, they're not going to be able to do it. But you can match it all and then go in and fine tune things. But someone like me, I would drop it into the AI, and if it doesn't come out perfect, then I'm like, shit, what do I do? You know what I mean?
Oh no.
So because I know nothing about color, very little.
Yeah, I mean, I've dabbled a little bit too, but it's crazy. Like, Resolve is awesome and made the switch a while ago, and I'm glad I did. But the amount of just changes, like, oh, you could change it on the log settings, you could change it on this, you could add some color in here, do some power windows. Like, it's just endless. It's definitely one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube is like people color grading, because it's just like wild. It's not just like click a button or like let's warm up the highlights and let's cool off the shadows. It's like incredible the amount of space that, like, even just the small things that are fine tuned, and then all of a sudden you see the final image and you're like, this is incredible.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like, there's such depth to Resolve and Baselight too. that it, and like that's part of the education I feel like with clients that are like on the fence of like, well, I can do lift gamma gain, I can do those corrections, but there's so much more to it.
So
And
much.
so yeah, showing them like what's possible and like how far we can go in color that borders right on VFX, so then they don't have to pay a VFX artist, something like that, if they're on a budget. I remember I did this feature film for a network, a big network, and I love the mentality that the Above the Lines had of like, let's fix it in production. Well, there's some things on like a 2-3 week movie shoot for a TV movie, like you can't do, it's just limited time.
Yeah.
So it has to be done in color. And so they were a little skeptical at first. And then by the end of it, they were like, oh, I'm so glad we did this, because there was so much stuff we were able to save and correct and like make it look the way it is, like, add $1 million to the budget kind of thing.
Yeah, because you can really shift the way a scene looks with the color. And now with some of the stuff in DaVinci too, like I haven't used it yet, but there's like some lighting type stuff. I don't know if that's something that's useful for what you do or not, but I've seen tutorials on like adding kind of light into a scene.
Right. No, totally. So like, in between general contractors that build the building and the architects, there's often this like abrasive relationship of like, let's do this, we can't do that,
Yeah.
And so one of the big like things like 10 years ago in color grading was we can't correct bad lighting, we can't do that.
Right.
That was like the go-to. And that same film I just finished, I used to say this, but now with Relight, it maps the image and you can create this fill light. They didn't have enough time to match, you can create this directional light and finesse it to like really look accurate and passable. And now it's a totally new game because it maps the image. You could have an alpha map. It's just an incredible tool. And I'm so happy Resolve did that along with the depth mapping tool that they developed. I think both are like, all right, this is great. We're moving into really fun territory.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with something like a program, because it's still the same footage, it's still the same image, but now with this program, it's like reading into the way that the image was like composed and like how to add things like 3D almost inside of something that was already shot, which is crazy.
Exactly. And the fact that it's like, an O effect, drop it on a node, and like it's all the controls right there. You don't have to send it to a 3D artist to like recreate the environment and like CGI the stuff you want that's there. Now it's like a totally different game, which has been, super helpful and made things so much faster. It makes, I think, my work better. The fact that I can now correct to some extent lighting, like if they didn't have time to match or like they just missed it.
Yeah. And what does it look like when you first started getting into the professional world of color grading? Is it hard to develop your look and yourself to like sort of separate yourself from other color graders, or did you kind of know where you wanted to go with that?
That's a great question. Let's see. Did I know where I wanted to go?
Yeah. Did you have a color like space you wanted to like? What is your look and feel that you wanted to add to the world, I guess?
Yeah. It's a buzzword now with like all things visual, cinematic. We want it cinematic. But what do you mean cinematic? Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
Just make it look cool.
Just make it look cool. I don't know what cinematic means. So like part of that is, I don't like real, like there's a trend. There was like a few months ago going around like really dark, not much contrast, crushed black sometimes. Yeah. That's not my style. I like to use the full range with softer highlights and still have like a cinematic S-curve, where we still have detail in the shadows. It's not this digital where it's just clipped. But yeah, so I'd say that's my style. Like a lot of agencies come to me because I feel like I blended this nice commercial, bright, poppy look with cinematic, because that's why ad agencies are coming to me. And so I would say that's my look.
Yeah, I really like the color on the I think it was a more recent project on BT. It was Ruined, maybe.
Yeah. And no, that was a lot of fun. Actually, what I was mentioning about SCAD, like half went to Atlanta, half went to LA. A friend from SCAD actually shot those two BT films.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's I only saw the trailer, but it looks like a wild film.
It is. It's out there. It's like, oh man, what? All right. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun to be a part of that one.
Yeah. What did they shoot that on? Do you
They
remember?
shot that on a Red. I don't remember which Red.
Yeah.
And then Red developed these creative LUTs, and their film bias LUT looks really cool. So that's what they used on production, like for their in-camera LUT. And then I recreated it in Resolve, and then added a few things, finessed it, and yeah, we came out with a I think, a really good looking picture.
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah, for the going to the LUTs and the film bias and like production LUTs, are there certain LUTs that you would suggest using on productions, like just to have an idea of what you're going for color?
Yeah, if we can make one beforehand,
Yeah.
that's the best, because then we're like, okay, we've locked in the look. Um, it's for monitoring LUTs, it just depends.
Yeah.
I really like Red, the LUTs they've developed, like for, film bias and so forth. It's this big package. I really like what they've done. Generally, I stay away from advising people to like use LUTs. Just because it can seriously, in the post side of things, let's say production, okay, it's great, but if we haven't run tests on how far we can push and pull it, it could end up like hindering us down the line. Like if we're breaking the image or something like that, we don't have as much flexibility.
So you mean like baking it in?
Yeah, even baking it in, but like
Yeah.
if you're shooting with this LUT and that's how
Right.
you're exposing it with all
True.
the different colors, then it's like, well, okay, we're back here now. What can we do? But yeah, I definitely don't recommend baking it in ever.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too, is like when you're looking on screen and you see the LUT, you're like, this looks pretty good. But not
Yeah.
knowing how to read like your waveforms and your
Mhm.
false color is very dangerous, because all of a sudden you actually don't have that much information because you've clipped your highlights or whatever it is, or you've underexposed skin tones. And I think that happens a lot with LUTs.
Absolutely. And the monitors, if they're like looking at a really great monitor that comes with a lot of the cameras, it's like, oh, okay, we can see in the highlights, like you were saying, like clipping the highlights. Oh, we have detail in the shadows. They're like, oh, okay, this looks great. Like skin tones are exposed normally, when it's totally off because
Totally.
the scopes aren't there. They're not paying attention to that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been a big learning curve, like in the film process, from all the years of like filming and making whatever commercials, whatever we do here. I think it's been interesting to see that if you don't know your tool very well, then there's no point in having like expensive cameras or whatever they are, because if you're underexposing, your image is going to look terrible. It doesn't matter if you have a $50,000 camera or $1,000 camera.
Absolutely. And RAW is great. There's a lot of information in RAW, but it's not, you can't actually go in and adjust the ISO. It's just the information in the image or in the file already. So yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it comes back and it's all underexposed, and it's like, oh, what can we do? It's like, well, we have a lot of cleanup work ahead of ourselves. And so it's not like totally unsalvageable, but still like depending on the severity of it, but can still make it look good. It just takes a little finessing and tweaking.
Yeah, we had a project that Dan and I recently worked on, and we shot C-Log 2 and the Canon RAW internally in C70, and the Canon RAW is pretty nice. I mean, we were very surprised because we wanted to shoot the project on Reds, but it was a hunting project. We would have had to bring like 14 batteries a day or something crazy with a Red. And so like, we have to shoot this on Canons because we're hiking out in the woods with our cameras. Right. And it came out really well. Like, I think the image is pretty good compared to like a lot of the RAW stuff out there.
I believe it. No, Canon's color science is really cool. I love the way people and nature look. The yellows are just phenomenal.
Skin tones are nice too. I like it better than so. I've had a problem with Sony. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Sony skin tones, but maybe that's because I'm not a color grader. I don't know.
Yeah, no. That used to be a big, like with the A7S2 and that like era of Sony's, like even with the FX cameras, like that was always a big issue. But since they've updated their color science and it's a bit better, like the Venice 2 looks awesome. Yeah. I love the Venice. The skin tones look fine. They can be sweetened, but but the lower, like the more prosumer or like lower end of the pro status cameras, it can get a little dicey. I feel like, oh man, especially S-Log 2 back like in the Sony A7S2. Oh, that was nuts. I remember I was matching. It was a documentary, and it was for what was that for? Gravitas Ventures. Yeah, yeah. It's
I
so
love that production company. They're
yeah,
awesome.
it's super cool. It's
So
super
good.
cool. And so it's for them, and there were like 8 different cameras, all different GoPros. Like GoPro 3 was one of them, and like it was a dark shoot.
Nice.
But and I was matching in this car scene, matching like it was a documentary, matching a A7S2 to a GoPro, and the hero image was on the GoPro, not like a Sony camera. So yeah, it was like that was what I was matching to, and that was like okay, well, Sony S-Log 2 kind of isn't there for me, but since they've updated it, and it seems fine.
Yeah. Is it hard to like for the GoPros now? Are they pretty easy to match to other cameras to make it not
Yeah.
look so GoPro like?
Yeah, yeah. It just depends on the like in low light, it's really tough. But if it's broad daylight, it can be done for sure because they're so like they just really advanced so far that like okay, this is passable. I can make this look like this. Um, but ideally, they would use the Sony. What is it? What they used on Top Gun, the Rialto. Is that what it's called?
Is that the small like action
Yeah,
camera that they have?
yeah. The small action camera, like the brain is in a different section, and then it's a wire to the
Uh,
actual sensor and lens. So like
I
that's
think
super
I've
cool
seen
to
that.
work with because it's so easy to match. And then like I've seen some BMD cameras used as like crash cams, and those are fun too to match.
Yeah, battery life on them is terrible,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they
You
are.
get
I
an
mean,
hour. Better get this right.
but for the price of the camera, like you can get a pocket 4K for like $1,000, and it shoots RAW, which is
Absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely. And I think they have like 14 stops dynamic range somewhere around there. So
Yeah,
it's like, okay, all right, we're in business for $1,000. Like you can't beat it.
it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what would you tell somebody who wanted to get into color grading who has never even touched it? Like, how would you even start? Would you start like just going through YouTube videos? Would you start by filming yourself and like learning more of the ropes of like lighting and that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I would start studying cinematography and painting and reading books about color. Yeah, that's what I would recommend for sure. Is starting to understand like, okay, what makes an image look good and what makes it look bad? Like, what do people like? What do you like? What's your style? And kind of developing that process. But yeah, I would definitely recommend shooting to understand like just the limitations of a camera and B like what you can do with decent lighting and so forth. Yeah, definitely start there, and then just practice. I mean, spent a lot of time practicing like finessing and testing different things and so forth. And a lot of the tests look like garbage. Like this is
Yeah.
trash. But some of them are like, okay, this I can use. This is great. I'm going to save this in like a power grid bin and so forth.
Yeah, I think people don't see the hours that you put in behind the scenes before you get the projects. It's like, yeah, you get all these cool projects, but to get to that, you had to do all these like projects that you said, yeah, you would trash or you'd be like, this is no good, or now this is a better space that we're in. And it takes hours. And I think people think you could just like click a button or like, I'm just going to color grade this. It's going to take me 20 minutes.
It'll be fine. Just hit auto. It'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
it's
do it.
AI.
Yeah. AI. I don't need to think or like process the image. Yeah, no, that's just it. And it's yeah, it's not that simple. And like there's so much depth to it. That like I'm constantly learning. I think most of the people in my field are learning. And one of the really great things about the colorist community is like everyone is kind of open armed, like open door, like, oh, you want to chat? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Like Lutz
That's
Forster
cool.
out of Germany, who does really incredible car commercials. And it's kind of ironic. His name is Lutz. It's Lutz, which is funny. Yeah, right. And then like just yesterday, I was rendering the film we were working on. And I just had a random question, and I was like, and I didn't know the answer, So I hit Joe Deanna up, who's a BMD rep and a colorist. He's on Mixing Light. He's one of the contributors there. Like And he responded like that. And so I was okay, cool. And there wasn't like anything like you should pay me for this information or anything like that. He was just being kind because I've spoken to him. I met him at NAB 2 years ago. And so it's a really open community. And I think that really fosters an environment for people to grow, learn, and not be as daunted or like shut out as some different sects of filmmaking in the motion media industry are.
Yeah, why do you think that is? It does seem like in the motion picture industry, everybody's kind of like, oh, I don't want to share my secrets of how I shot this, or like.
But I'll tell you why I think that is because you have to be a professional in a color grade space. You have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
When you're asking your friend, you're not just Joe Schmo, he might steal this. It's like you actually have to understand coloring. You have to be very good. Filmmaking, you can go grab a camera and start filming. You could, kind of steal things from whoever. I think that's what it is. Is like, as a color grader and you're asking your friends, you have to be knowledgeable. You can't just be a Joe Schmo off the street and be like, let me steal what you're doing, because you're not going to understand it.
True.
Right.
Yeah, it's so technical at that level. I think that's when like even editing and filmmaking gets to that technical level too, because some people... They see like, oh, you put this together, you edited this, like we could probably do this, or we'll just hire somebody to edit it. Like you film it and we'll edit it. And you're like, okay. And then they get the footage and it's flat. And they're like, why is it gray?
What is going on?
That's how we shot it. And that's how it always gets shot. So good luck. And then it usually comes back to us and we're like, we figured.
Go figure, of course. Yeah, and that's, and one of the things I think that, like, to answer your question about like why that is, all boats rise with the tide, and I think that goes both ways in terms of like there can be some green colorists that have an idea, or like aspiring colorists that have an idea, and they're labeling themselves colorists but have no idea what they're doing. So like, let's say there's a client who is on the fence about color, but this new person convinced them otherwise, and it comes back and the color looks like shit because they don't know what they're doing. So it really benefits the whole community that we're all knowledgeable and help each other, because because we're still fairly new, we don't want bridges burned or like people to have a bad taste and then spread that. So it's like, it really helps. I think the overall part of this industry is helping other people, because, people can get burned and be like, have that impression in their head for the rest of their life or career or whatever it may be. Like, no, colors are just jokes. They don't know what they're doing,
Yeah. And I think it helps to work together, because there's so much work out there. And I know like some people will say, well, it's not that lucrative. We can't find as much work as everybody else because we're like maybe at the low end or the medium end or whatever it is. It's just like, there's always going to be more work, I think. And I think sharing is definitely something that allows you to grow as a creator. So like whether you're color grading or you're filmmaking, like you share some knowledge with somebody else, they'll share some stuff with you. Maybe they get a job that they can't take and they're like, oh, I remember that. Like Steven should take this because like he gave me that tip or whatever. So I think it helps to like expand your network. Like if you're just trying to stay to yourself and like not meet other people and grow in the industry, like it's just it's not going to work.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that idea. There's one caveat though. All my DRPs, my DaVinci Resolve projects, stay in-house to protect trade secrets, part of the deal. But helping out another like colleague or someone who's aspiring to be a color, it just helps the whole industry, and it helps build a community.
Yeah, that's a good idea, not to share the project. I don't really love to do that with clients either. We don't usually get asked to share the project, but I think that is part of it. Like you're sharing like deep into like what you do, and that's your process. And it's okay to keep that to yourself, because that's like who you are. That's like your individual like ability.
Oh, you mean share the project as in they'll see your nodes, they'll see everything that you've done? Yeah, I got it.
Exactly. Yeah. They'll see your cards, and it's like, this is the mystery. This is why you hired it,
But they still wouldn't get it, probably.
Right.
Of course not. But yeah,
what does this do? And everything crashes.
Yes. Right. Oh, no. Yeah. Or like they turned one important node off in a timeline grade, and it's like, oh, the whole image changed. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that though.
Yeah. And with like shooters or a production company, it's the same idea of like, what's proprietary to them is the footage they shot. They can't turn over all the footage to the client without like getting paid for it because, what's the point of that?
We get asked that a
We're
lot.
actually going through that right now.
I'm sure it happens all the time.
We get asked that all the time. Like, well, you'll shoot it and then we don't want to pay for editing. So then we'll edit it. And I'm like, okay, but then you have to pay for the footage. So, and then it gets to them. And like I said before, it's log. And then the person editing thought it was just like, oh, we're just going to cut it up in iMovie.
Right. It's like, I make TikTok videos. I can cut this commercial. Like, oh, all right. Like, oh, but then it's log and I don't know what I'm doing. So, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we're like with the thing on TikTok too. It's like, where do you think the future of video and creating is going?
Oh man, it's up in the air because they're especially like from Hollywood to YouTube and TikToks. I mean, YouTubers have been monetizing view counts for a number of years now, which is amazing. It's awesome. One of my friends from college, Daniel Thrasher, he's a famous YouTuber. I got to color one of his videos. It's really
awesome.
Cool. But where do I think that's heading? The hopeful part of me is hoping that there is a rise, which there seems to be. The data is there. Continued rise in independent filmmaking outside the studio system, because the studio system right now is franchises, which are great. They bring in a lot of money for the studio. It's awesome. But the original stories, like the Good Will Huntings and so forth, they're not quite being made as much. And so I think there's a rise on the independent level, which opens more opportunities for everyone. And so I think on that aspect, there's going to be a whole range of films getting theatrical releases in the next 10 years that otherwise wouldn't 10 years ago with the theater system or the studio system. And in terms of TikTok and like content creation, I think it's just going to get better and better. And I think part of that is going to be AI. I think there's going to be a lot of AI in like content creation, like, oh, cool. Hey, generative prompt. I want this to look like Joker. It won't actually look like Joker, but it'll be convincing enough,
Yeah.
Something like that. And so I think that's coming, and I think that's inevitable for everyone. But, there's ways to, like, there's opportunities everywhere in every sect. Like, okay, TikTokers, let's say that quality instead of quantity, it shifts. Okay, great. That's good for everyone.
Think about in like 10, 15 years, you're going to be able to just write down what you want, and AI is just going to be able to create the video that you asked for.
I mean, they're starting to do that. I've seen some AI trailers, and it was just made by AI, and they look incredible. Like they look like real films.
And AI actually created every single part of the scene,
the
right?
whole
like
entire.
Grab videos from.
No,
that's insane. It's insane.
That's
I don't
wild.
know how people have done it because I've never tried it, but I've watched actual like 30-second film trailers that were just AI, and they're incredible.
Unbelievable.
Incredible. And that's like, because it's computer learning, right? They're literally studying in a finite amount of time all the great trailers, all the great films, and then they're just putting it together like, this is the framework, which is really cool and really scary at the same time.
Yeah, what could be next is like deep fake documentaries. So it's like not even real stories, but deep fake. I mean, you can start watching documentaries and be like, wow, this is incredible. And it's like not even real stories, not even real people.
Right. And, and that's part of what the SAG strikes, not with documentaries, but with narratives, is like they are part of the deal with studios were pushing for this, like having ownership of their face to put in AI or like deep fake stuff. And it's like, oh, dude, that's dangerous territory. And so that's the big pushback, at least in narrative. In documentaries, it's still there, right? I mean, that's what corporate companies are doing now. They're not hiring voiceover artists anymore. They're just using an AI machine, that sounds like a human. And so
it's
the voiceover
good,
artist,
but it's not the same. I mean, I've seen it, and it's just not. And it will never be like, it'll never have that human touch, I don't think. Like, same with like people using ChatGPT to like write prompts or like write things online, like Twitter posts. It's like you can tell that it was crafted. I mean, you could start that way. Like I've definitely used it a little bit to like learn how to write different things and like maybe get ideas. But if you just straight up post that, people will be able to tell.
For sure. And I couldn't agree more. And it's also, you guys remember that law student who wrote like one of his papers or something like that? And thought ChatGPT was bulletproof law-wise, but it was totally a fake case that he referenced. Like it wasn't real. Like
Oh, I didn't hear about
made it
that.
up. Yeah. So it's like,
No way.
Yeah, and the professor, I guess, who was grading, he's like, I've never heard of this case. Let me look it up. And like it didn't exist.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So there's always that, right? That's human error.
Yes. And I've seen teachers getting upset with like kids using it to write essays. I don't know though. It's like, I don't know. It's like it's a tool. So like kids are learning
It's where the future's headed for sure. So
like learning how to use a tool. Maybe you shouldn't use it for everything, and maybe it's a way to start brainstorming. But it's going to be used in everything, so you might as well learn how to use it.
Right. I mean, that's like when computers first came out. Oh, they're not handwriting anymore. They need to do handwriting. No, like the future is learning to keyboard, right? And then like it just moves from there. Now we're in AI. So yeah, no, I think it's definitely a tool that's going to be super helpful and should be learned by a number of people. I know SCAD is starting to implement a AI program of like developing that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you have any certain routines or things that you go through in order to start a color grading process? Is there like this is what I do all the time?
Yeah, there are. I always look at, I feel like I'm plugging this great website, Shot Deck. I always look at Shot Deck for inspiration. And then I'll look at like what some of my people that, colorists I look up to, MTO, Walter Volpato. There's so many of them, but I'll look at what they did in a similar aspect. Okay, that's cool what they did. I like that. And then, all right. And so that's a definite process of mine, is like researching and planting the seeds and so forth. In looking if it's a specific company, making sure it's on brand with like them. If they didn't send brand guide, like I'll go and do research into that. So a lot of it is research. And one thing I definitely do is, okay, I'll do the first pass and then I'll take a day. Like I'll stop, refresh, because your eyes refresh. Everyone gets glazed over, at the 11th hour. So definitely go back and look and then do like review the first pass. Then I'll dive into the second pass, and it's the same process of like refreshing. Okay, let's go.
Do you ever try and like watch something and then try and color similar to it? Like, hey, I'm going to try and match that look. Like I've seen this done, whatever, like the Joker, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try this out and see if I can get as close to it as I can. Like, is that ever part of the research, is like trying to match other color graders?
Sometimes. Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I'll pull stills from Shot Deck, and, it's not exact, but it's in the ballpark. They're sRGB. And so, it's close to Rec 7, pretty close to Rec 709. So yeah, I'll develop a look, and from that, especially if like the client is very has mentioned that film a number of times, like Joker, then I'll definitely dive into that. But also the thing is, there's so much into that image that makes it what it is outside of color. There's lighting, there's production design. And so if those 2 things aren't quite there, like didn't match the colors, then it's a much more of an uphill battle. It's still somewhat doable, but it's like recreating production design in color is not the place for that to happen. That should be production, Yeah,
so like if you shot something a certain way and you're like, hey, can we make it look like this? You're like, well, you should have shot it similar, because like this is not close.
Right. Not even in the same area of the ballpark, not in the same state. It's like way over here. It's like, we want it to look like Drive or something like that. Like, okay, let's reshoot it then, like something like that. But one of the bonuses of involving a colorist in pre-production is like we can run tests and we can actually get the image and the colors to look in that certain way, to have that aesthetic, and like, okay, the production designer's here to run tests. So testing has been to avoid that has been great.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that either, but I think that's actually makes it so much easier in the long run if you hire you before the actual filming.
Right.
It does, man.
If they have the budget.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that takes a lot of planning in post, because everyone thinks of an editor because they've been around for over 100 years, right? But not many people, and then they get the footage back and the pictures locked, and like, now we need a colorist, So it's like, so we're pushing the colors, we being the colors community, are really pushing to get involved in pre-production, because if the DP is involved, I feel like you definitely want the colorists involved, because they work hand in hand. Same with the director. yeah, so we're pushing to get more involved in the pre-production process, and it does just benefit everything on a whole new level, especially in commercials. Like if you have the actual client, like from Purdue Chicken or something, like they're a viewing monitor and they can see the color for what it'll be in the tail end. It makes the process so much smoother, smoother.
And do you usually have to be on site for something like that, or do you create the look ahead of time and you give it to them, and then they can just show the client because it's already there?
Create the look ahead of time and show the client because it's already there.
Yeah, so you're not doing it on the fly.
Nope, I don't even need to be on set. They'll have a DIT on set usually, so like if there's like something that needs to happen, like color wise, then they can adjust it there. But yeah, normally it's just sending it out into the wild.
And has anybody ever like brought you on in the beginning and then decided they didn't have the budget to keep going, or do you when you sign on to do the project, you're like, okay, we'll do pre-production and post-production, and you're like locked in for a contract?
Yeah. No, usually I haven't had that happen, fortunately, knock on wood, right? I haven't been like, well, we're out of money, so see ya. No, we haven't had that happen.
That's good.
Yeah. My contracts are pretty solid. Knock on wood again. I hope there's not any like law loopholes in there. I'm pretty sure the lawyer I use is good. But yeah, no, that hasn't happened yet, but I could definitely see that happening. Like, we already have the lot. We're fine. Right.
Like, that's what I was thinking.
We paid you half for the deposit, right? We're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I would hate for
You've never had that happen, which is good. So you don't have to chase people down like, oh, that was the lot I created and you just went with it.
No, not at all. Fortunately, that would be I feel like that's just not a good business practice on anyone's part. You know what
definitely not. Not something we would do either. So don't get any ideas.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah,
send us some lots.
I'm not trying to say that's what we're gonna do on our side, but
the idea is there. No,
definitely not. I think the other thing that I wanted to talk about too is like you are in Atlanta, which is a hub for film, but do you think that helps with what you do, or could you live anywhere and do what you do and still be as successful? Like, could you live in Maine in the woods?
Really good question.
And still,
I wish.
I know, right?
I wish. It's funny you mentioned that because a friend of mine who's a colorist in Charlotte, John Schroeder, with the postage, we were talking about Maine. We were coloring something together, and I was talking about Maine and how much I love it, right? And he's like, "Yeah, I tried to live in Mercer." I was like, "No way! I have a lake house on Mercer." All this, but the infrastructure wasn't there. Like the fiber internet wasn't there to have that happen. So that was that thing. And I'm very much I like to get out and meet people, like network, and hear the story, because that's one thing about our industry is like everyone has a different story of how they got there. Right. And it's always fascinating to hear, for me at least. So no, I don't think maybe if I had like 10 more years under my belt, maybe. Yeah. Like some of these really cool DPs. One was on the Netflix show. I can't remember the name, but it was like showcasing his house. And he can live anywhere in the world because he gets called up and then he goes and shoots and then comes back to his really cool house in the middle of nowhere. That's the dream, awesome. Right? Yeah, right. That's the dream.
Yeah, I mean, we live close to Boston because that's kind of where our clientele is. So it's like, I would love to live on a lake or next to a mountain. Right. But we have to travel to the shoots and film. And most people are like, yeah, we'll just fly you in. Not at our level at the moment. I mean, we've been on some travel shoots before, but we're not like in the middle of the mountains and somebody's like, hey, we need you. Fly down to Atlanta.
Right. But having said that, I would say like 50% of my clients are remote. Like they're in Boston or they're in LA or they're in Toronto. So, that's tough to say if I'd be as successful in another area because, there's so many people here that I get to meet and like, their client, they become, they reference my name. Oh, he's in town, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So there is a lot to that.
I think word of mouth is definitely big in this industry because we've been asked that before, like, oh, how did you get this client? How did you find this client? It's like, well, we were in town and then our client talked to them and they met with us, and it would be nice to live in the middle of the woods, but I think at the moment for production, the way that we do things too, it's like you got to network, you got to be near where you're going to work at the moment.
For sure, no doubt about it. Until there are robots, right, controlling everything. No, like with the VR, and especially in production because you have to be there. Whereas post, you can overnight me your hard drive, and I can be in Hong Kong or Shanghai, or Australia. But then like it gets tricky remote because, if they don't have a color calibrated monitor and they can't come to where I am in my suite, that's a totally different thing. Sometimes I'll send out a color calibrated monitor, or if they have a new, MacBook Pro, they have a Rec 709 SDR mode, which is it's not calibrated, but it's
Pretty
in the
close.
realm of like passable decency. Or I'll send out, an iPad Pro or something like that, but to get around that. But no, yeah, I think I have to be in a hub right now for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, someday we'll be in the woods.
Yeah,
Kind
someday.
I think Atlanta too is the best hub to be at because it's kind of up and coming. LA's kind of, LA sucks.
Yeah,
Sucks now.
I feel like LA.
But Atlanta's popping.
Yeah, no, Atlanta's popping for sure.
I think Austin, Texas might start to get there too. I know like the tech hub, but I feel like film industry might grow there at some point because the tech hub's there. But
For sure.
Atlanta, Boston, it's never really like, I mean, people come here and film, but I don't know that it's like grown to be anything big. But it's still cool. It's like it's a different network and it's similar to New York, but New York's got that big film look and feel, I guess.
Yeah, no, totally. And I like Boston. I like living in Boston. I worked for a number of ad agencies there, and that was fun.
Yeah, got some big ones.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mullen Lowe is there. And then actually in Portland, Maine, the Via agency, they're super cool.
They do some big stuff.
Yeah. All LL Bean stuff.
Yeah. I've wanted to do some LL Bean stuff, but I think they kind of have that contract. So
they do. They have it locked in for sure. Yeah, but no, Boston's a great town though. I really enjoyed Boston. I mean, the corporate is definitely there. The documentary scene and the commercial scene. I only worked on like a handful of films when I was there though.
What's your favorite project that you've worked on to date?
Ooh, that is a great question.
Or one of your favorite projects, I guess.
Let's see. One of my favorites.
You've done all kinds of stuff. You've done music videos, you've done films, you've done
I want to say, like, part of me wants to say, like, oh, the one I was, like, nominated for Colorist of the Year. No.
Right.
It's not that one, unfortunately.
Which one was that?
It was for 2 years. The first one, the second was Nightmare in New York. The first one was Death of My Father. Death of My Father. And it's funny, it was the exact same team, same director, DP for the first one.
Colorist of the Year is pretty sweet. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's it's through ICG. And it was for the short film category, not to like downplay it, but
Still,
it was fun.
I mean, that's cool.
It was
cool
cool
to be at that level.
It is really, it's neat.
Do you ever look at that type of stuff and you're like, wow, like I can't believe I got to this level? Or are you ever like, now I need to get to the next level? Like what kind of motivates you to keep going further?
Definitely very competitive. They're there. I want to get there. So like, and that just takes practice on my end. But one thing that was super cool, because it still hasn't hit me that like I'm still like that I've done Luke Combs' videos or like anything like that. I'm still in my mind, I'm still learning and still a student, which I think is good. It helps me keep going. But but one of the things was I was in the running for this commercial. It was a series of commercials for a hockey stick, actually. Some Boston Bruins players were in it, which was super cool. I was like, oh, it's my home. But then it was between the production company was very transparent. Like, hey, we're thinking about you and this other guy. It's like, oh, great, cool. Glad to be in the running, very grateful for that. And then like a few months later, I didn't hear back. But then I saw on Instagram, one of the guys that like I go to like look, see what they're doing. They're really, really good. He got the job. And so I was like, I'm at his level now. That's so cool. Like, cool. No way, and like, that was on a Saturday. And I've mentioned this guy to my wife before, cause I've like, look at this work. It's so good, and so I'm like, that job, blah, 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 with the hockey sticks. She was like, yeah. I was like, guess who did it? And she goes like, because I talk about the guy all the time. She's like, it wasn't blah, 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 was it? I was like, yeah, it was. It's like this whole thing. And she's like, no way, you're there. So it's like this whole like realizing like, oh, cool. Okay, I'm at that level now, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's cool to be in the same space as some of these people like you look up to. I think that
Absolutely, man.
as you get better at a skill like this, you start to find yourself amongst those people and you're like, whoa, this is not something I thought was going to be possible, but it's amazing to then be in that circle.
It is, man, and it is. It's really rewarding, Like I saw that on Instagram before I was mowing a lawn. Like I've never been happier mowing my lawn. And speaking of circles, I was at NAB and it was my first time at NAB, and like I networked or like gotten to know some other colorists over the internet, not like in person, but then there meeting up, I got to meet Joe, Deanna, a number of people, and but then I got invited to a film like private party, and like just the circle. I was sitting here, there was an open bar, so like drinking a beer, and I'm looking around me. I'm like, I look up to your work, your work, your work. I've studied your work, all this stuff.
That's
and Nadeau was actually there, and I was like, man, I'm here. This is so cool,
That is cool.
to be in that literal circle.
And what's NAB like? I mean, I've never been, but I've always looked at it and I'm like, is it worth going to just network? Because like it's all just gear usually, which is cool, but
Yeah.
you could see that stuff anywhere.
Yeah, this was the first time it was open after the pandemic, so it was still a little sparse, but it was so fun, man.
Yeah.
Like, getting to see, especially Black Magic Design. They always have this really cool booth, and that's where I met Joe. And so, yeah, man, I think it was worth it. Even if you don't get a pass, I would go there just for the socializing, which is
Right.
what one of my buddies does every year. He doesn't actually buy the whatever pass to go and explore the
Like
booths.
hangs out outside.
Yeah.
Everybody get out. Like, where's the
Well,
party
like-
at? Let's turn it
yeah. Well, there's so many parties and get-togethers, and even like after the film open party was like one for graphic designers or motion designers, and that has nothing to do with me. But I was like, let's go meet them. It's
True.
cool. It's fun. There's so much
Yeah.
social aspects to it. That's like it was just a blast learning all the new tech. But like the real fun part was like getting to like hang out with a bunch of colorists.
And it's so specific because it's just really for filmmaking and creating. So it's like you find your niche right there and you don't have to like reach out online or send like a cold email, and you can meet some of these people that you never know. Like you might end up working with them later down the road.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, Joe, I had spoken with online only. He knew my face, I knew his. And so he was like testing. This is when Resolve 18 had just released with like depth mapping. So he like had his whole setup with the advanced panel. So it was really cool with like chairs around. And so I hop in the chair and he looks over, he goes, oh, and so it's like this big thing. It's always
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one of the things, at least as like a DP standpoint, the Venice 2, when I went to NAB, was like the product of the year. And I got to test it with these really, really cool lenses. They were by Zeiss. I don't remember the name. But, in the, like, it was just really cool to play with all the equipment. Like, to put on, like, if I was DP, I'd be like, that's on the wish list. That I definitely need,
That's probably why I don't go, because it's so dangerous.
Right,
I already like buy stuff left and right, and I'm like, oh, I need that.
Yeah.
Like, I look at lenses like every day because I'm like, oh, those lenses are so cool. I mean, that's the thing with this industry is like all this stuff is so cool. Like you want to have it all, and then you do have a lot of it, and you only use so much of it. Like it's like camera specific per like what we're shooting. Like we need to shoot something specific to Canon, we'll shoot it. Red, we'll shoot it, but like you don't shoot everything raw red 8K because that'd be insane.
That'd be crazy, right? No one does that.
I mean, you want to.
Well, you want to, but like the limitation.
Terabyte is an hour.
Perfect.
So cool.
Let's shoot
Is that MKB or whatever?
Yeah, right. Let's shoot 40 hours.
Yeah.
But one of the things is like one thing at NAB that I really enjoyed was getting to interface with the actual engineers behind products. Like at the OWC booth, there was this rate system that I was really interested in. I got to see it in person. And then the guy next to me that just happened to be, he was the engineer. And so I was asking him all these things like, blah, 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 did this, that, and the other. Because I'd read reviews on it. And he's like, yeah. And the funny thing is, my office is right next to the complaints office. So whatever I hear, I add it. So it's really cool to hear that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. It was a blast. I'll probably go back next year, probably, depending on where we're at.
Yeah. I feel like I have to go at some point because it's definitely one of those things I've looked at. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it just seems like gear. And like, yeah, there's some cool people there, but I feel like it's a good way to network and meet maybe somebody that wants to work on a project again.
For sure. Absolutely. And you'll never know who you meet there or who you'll see from your past, man. Like, I was taking a picture of this big LED wall, and like you could see behind it and the whole thing. So I thought it was really cool, like see the tech behind. And like I was with my wide angle lens, like taking a picture, and then I hear Steven Nadeau, Nick Gibb, what are you doing here? And like we hadn't seen each other since working on CBGB when he was running Med Studios in Savannah, Georgia. Like it was this whole big thing. Like I was like, what are you doing? You know, and then I saw an old classmate of mine from SCAD who I hadn't talked to in probably 10, 15 years. It's just wild.
That's cool.
Yeah. I feel like it's on the list. Maybe we'll see you there next year then.
Hopefully. Let's make a plan. Let's make it happen.
Or in Atlanta. I mean,
or in Atlanta,
maybe we'll come down to Atlanta.
Please do. If there's so much to do here.
There is. As long as I keep all my gear with me.
It's tethered to you. Just have you know those wallet chains that were popular in the 90s? Do that, but with your equipment.
Yeah. I mean, you should never leave your equipment alone in a car anyway, so that's really my fault. So
But, you know, you're in a new city. Like, you figure it's safe. What street were you on? Were you on Peachtree Street? Do you remember?
We were at like a taco spot, and you could see the parking lot. It was a big parking lot near a dog park. It was also near the... what's that? There's like that walkway that goes through the city.
Yeah, I know where you were. The name of that walkway just escaped me. But I know you're next to Fetch Dog Park. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a pretty busy area. Or can be.
You're like, that's the worst place to park.
That's the one place you don't park.
Showed up and he was like, no, this happens all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe this should be a sign.
Yeah,
I don't know. Even if there was a sign, I don't know that I would have taken my
It's like the don't leave valuables in your car. Yeah. All right, let me take it with me.
I don't think that would have changed my mind, honestly.
Yeah, right. So you're either in the area like near Inman Park. Does that sound familiar? Where there's a fetch in the walkway right there.
I forget what it's called.
Either way,
the walkway is something belt.
Oh yeah. I should know this. I live in Atlanta.
It was like a railroad, right? And then they made a whole pathway out of it. And you can walk to the city, and there's like shops along the way and like beer spots.
New Realm Brewing's right there. Yep. I know exactly.
It's cool. I mean, we went to another spot where there's all these new like markets, and like it's a big building with all kinds of markets in it, and it was awesome.
Ponce City Market. Yeah.
So cool.
No, it's Ponce City is so fun. Did you go on the roof when you were there?
No, we didn't go on the roof.
Oh, they have, it's like an old school amusement park on the roof, like mini golf, and these have these like really dangerous frozen drinks. Like they'll sneak up on you.
Nice, and a railroad on a roof or a roller coaster on a roof.
Yeah, like
dangerous drinks, hang out on the roof.
It's like an old carnival. They don't. Yeah, right. And they have like the big slide, the thing that goes up, and like games where you can win like stuff. And that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
We go up there like for like special events, or like during the summer we'll have like event nights or something. It's fun.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out next time we're there.
Yeah, definitely recommend Ponce City Market.
Cool. Well, Steven, go ahead. I was going to say thank you, but if you have more stuff, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say the people that own that bought a whole section on names of roads are escaping me, near Ponce City Market.
Yeah. And
it's a bunch of old buildings, right? And the idea is they're gonna tear it down and kind of build an extension of Ponce City Market. So it's gonna be like this big thing where you can walk on the Beltline. Beltline, I think is what it's called. The walkway. Yeah. Now it comes to me. But so it's exciting. There's a lot happening in Atlanta, and you know, SCAD just built I keep plugging SCAD, but I'm obviously biased. But they just built a lot that rivals like Hollywood studio lots in Savannah. Sweet. So if they can do that in Atlanta, I think it's just gonna help explode. There's already a bunch of studios here, like Trilith and whatnot. But, you know, I think it's just gonna help having a creative university here.
So they're building their own space to make like films?
Yeah, their own backlot in Savannah. Yeah, it's actually right behind where Med Studios used to be. SCAD actually bought Med Studios. Yeah. So it's I forgot. Is it 14 acres? 14 acres, I think. It's pretty big.
Incredible place to go to school now.
Yeah, right.
Was their film program pretty big when you were there?
Not that big.
Yeah.
Really not that big.
It's not a big school either, right?
No, 10,000 people when I was
Yeah.
there. So yeah, it wasn't that big. And I gotta say, like, I knew most of the people in the film program. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, and I enjoyed it. Enjoyed the size of it. I thought it was a good size.
Yeah. It's cool to see the different film programs that pop up. Like where I went to school, UMaine, we didn't really have much, and they still don't. It's kind of just like
Right.
new media kind of all over the place. But the film school thing, I think, is getting better depending on where it is. I think there's some spots that are probably like the same kind of tech, same kind of learning, but
Yeah.
it's cool to see that they're investing in a space for people to learn like hands-on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's going to be huge for the students there. Like, I mean, part of the big problem is trying to get interesting locations, right?
Right.
That like would make the film look interesting. And then now you can build it in a lot and have this whole like street, like as a student film. Are you kidding me? That's wild. Never would have thought that would be a possibility. Like when I was in film school, it was always this challenge, like finding, we had in-house studios, but they were kind of small and like, you could only build so much. But yeah, no, that would have been incredible.
Was that part of like a major too, is like set building, or is that now, do you think that will be a big thing too? Like,
yeah, I
have
think
that
it's
space.
Yeah, the production designers I worked with at SCAD, they were really great about building stuff. This one, I didn't even mentioned like the color or anything. I was just gave her references. It was this film I was directing, and like at the time I was heavily influenced by Aronofsky. So like, like Swan, Requiem for a Dream, this is it, and like there's this distinct color in Requiem for a Dream. It's like this blue teal.
Yeah.
It kind of has this sickly feel to it. Like, oh, something's not right. And so she chose that color. And so like production design, I think at SCAD is a really underrated program there.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, this has been really great, really enjoyable. It's an hour and almost 10 minutes has gone by. I can't believe it.
I know. I feel like we could go all day probably.
Yeah,
but I'm sure that we should all get back to all of our other things that we need to. I'm sure you have projects, and if you don't, you have a nice Friday to hang out. So.
Hey, Friday. Yeah, we're actually heading up to Raleigh today where my wife and I met. Yeah, and then we're going to pick up the dog, the new dog.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
What kind of dog?
Yeah, Golden Doodle. Same as the one I have already. Her name's Sunny, and then the one I have now is Cricket.
Nice. Awesome.
They're adorable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. This was fun.
Of course. This was awesome. Yeah, we'll have to check back in a little bit and have you back on for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great, guys. I hope everything goes well. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
See ya.
See ya.